That's how we keep it safe around here.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Exactly. Shamir key splitting. Just two keys though in this case. Oh, but it looks like that we are live. Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Kent Pycat Gruber, and today I'm joined with two of my friends. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
So my name is Qantas. I go to Eastern Michigan University and help run EMU Sec Club. And I guess I'm PyCat's friend. Yeah.
And I am Stephen Legg, otherwise known as Zen Mode, here in the local InfoSec community. And I'm also Kent's friend and fellow MySec member.
Cool. So I think that brings up a really good question. What is MySec? I don't think we've covered that yet on the podcast.
So being that it's in your background, I think this is a good starting point. So MySec originally was founded as an organization that sought to bring the B-Sides Information Security Conference experience to the local community on a monthly basis. So for each chapter that exists every month, we have a talk that is presented, just like in the B-Sides format. And then we also have a social event that we get together and break bread, drink, do things. Started off as one chapter in Royal Oak, and now we are 5 chapters in Southfield, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Jackson, Michigan, with potentially another couple chapters coming out next year. And so the goal of MySec inside of that mission is just to lift up people in the community, give them opportunities to connect with others, share information, learn things, and do things that help them and help progress information security knowledge in Michigan.
That's awesome. So basically, in all these different cities, there's a little security community for people to go to and share ideas. That's awesome. And I've been going to MySec for a couple of years now, and just like enjoying it. Like I met you guys through it, and just having such a blast and learned so much. So thank you guys again for being on the podcast. So in this podcast, I really wanted to dig in to your background, Stephen. So what got you into security in the first place, or what introduced you to the MySec community to start with?
So I'll start with kind of how I got into security work to begin with, and then we can dive into kind of how I came into MySec and what I do in MySec. So I got my start in technology at 18 when I got out of high school. I started a company. And that company did mostly small business servers and disaster recovery services for very small companies, like 50 people and less. And I did that for about 6 years, and just kind of encountered by virtue of working with technology security issues, right? People get viruses, they have nefarious people doing bad things to their systems, and just kind of discovering those things and helping people to learn to deal with them is what got me into or interested in security. You get a big malware outbreak and have to lock everything down,
Yeah,
purge and burn, and document all the things, and then get everything going. I mean, that
totally been there. Yeah.
yeah, as a young IT guy, that was pretty exciting. It felt like the Wild West. But that's pretty much how I got started. So it was all like, I worked after my own company. I worked for a number of IT managed service providers, and also internal at a couple companies. But the common thread in all of them was that whether we were talking about the regulations that specifically came down from a compliance perspective that required different security changes, technologies, or what have you, or situations like malware outbreaks or malicious actors, nefarious insiders, kind of the litany of common security, breach scenarios that you would run into working in IT. Just kind of got more and more into it. Eventually, I got, more of an education in a lot of those areas, got some certifications, and just really loved it. I really like the difference I'm able to make for people and companies in fulfilling a security role, especially as what I currently do as my day job is serve as a virtual CISO for regulated businesses. So I sit down with my clients and do everything from kind of the standard compliance or security assessments, maturity assessments, helping them develop policies and controls that are meaningful, and then actually get them to a place where they're aware of their risk and they can map what they're doing to deal and mitigate those risks with back to their systems and what their teams are doing and their technologies.
Interesting. That's actually really cool. I find that pretty fascinating, being able to be like a virtual CISO. That's really cool. So how'd you get into that job specifically?
So prior to joining eCentire, I had worked on a research project that actually never got published because of some disclosure issues.
Mm.
But it was a massive kind of governance, risk, and compliance project, and I did a number of assessments with lots of different companies, and with the aim of helping them to develop a security program that would adequately address their risks and help them be aware of their risk as they continue down the path of doing their business stuff, right? So,
Totally.
um, my boss at that time, Sean Blankhorn, uh, reached out to me after when he had heard about kind of what I was doing, and we connected and made good sense. So we got started, and I've helped in the last 4 years, eCentire build their advisory services practice
Oh wow,
Nice.
around
that's really cool.
Um, yeah. And then, so what got you involved with MySec specifically after, getting experience in the field? Like what led you into MySec?
So I actually connected with MySec through a professional mutual connection that I had for a managed service provider I worked for.
Mm.
And I ended up at the I don't know if either of you guys were around then, but at the data center in Royal Oak, um, where we used to meet back in, gosh, what year was that? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, that predates me for sure.
Same. But no, it was
I think it was 2012. I think that's when I actually joined. Was like end of the year 2012.
so
Oh,
you
so you're
guys
a really OG member.
Well, so MySec proper started a
Compared to
year
me.
before that. Compared to you, I guess, sure.
he's a super OG.
Okay, I'm Mega OG, Mega OG Zen mode. I'm gonna start using that as my title on Slack.
I like it.
There you go.
Uh, no, so yeah, in 2012 I started, and I was just a member. I came out, and I think Null Space gave the first talk that I ever heard at
Okay.
MySec, and it was on SQL injection, and he just demoed what SQL injection looked like from an attacker's perspective and on the back end, and just kind of walked everybody through that. So I was like, that was really cool for me because at the time I was, just purely dealing with kind of the compliance end of things and, certain specific security technologies. I hadn't really done a lot with the red team at that point. So it was really fun. And that immediately kind of sparked my interest, and I started coming to all the meetups, got connected with the people that were kind of organizing stuff at that time, and just really, from there grew to the point where I took over the Royal Oak chapter, which then became Southfield, and ran that chapter for a couple of years. And then after that, I've since kind of moved into just being generic leadership, helping new chapters develop, mentoring people that are running existing chapters, running independent projects, workshops, and other things. Just generally kind of like trying to drive content and activity forward within the community and make sure that everyone feels supported as we're kind of doing that. So that's kind of what I do now, and a little bit about how I got into MySec.
And that's
Yeah, well, that's
so
awesome.
it's so interesting because I was just actually thinking about this today about how I look at the community we have in InfoSec, right? All the conferences we have, the get-togethers, the meetups, the socials, um, and then things like this, right? And then you look at like other industries, and it, they don't necessarily have as open of a community as we do. Like you when I first entered MySec, I was very kind of shy. Kent was like MySec, MySec, MySec. I was like, okay, I'll check it out. I'll see what it is. And um, then I just kind of started commenting and on different things, especially in random. Great channel, by the way. um, and everybody was so welcoming. And then I came to the first barbecue because I was like, I got to meet these people, and the most welcoming I've ever been in any community is in this community, which is just really sweet.
Yeah, it's been a very unique
And
experience that I kind of found a really nice niche in the security community. Like, there's all the different communities all over, the world, basically.
yeah,
And I've just found a really nice home, I feel, in the Michigan security community.
I call these people family,
Yeah.
because they are.
Yeah, I really enjoy how, like, in Slack, people say, like, good morning and stuff like that and do the coffee emojis. Like, I really do enjoy that kind of stuff. And then obviously, like, going and seeing everybody at the different socials, and people giving talks, and everyone like egging on someone to like give a talk that hasn't given a talk yet. Like that's all like awesome like career development, and everyone's pushing each other forward, and just like honestly having a lot of fun. Yeah, and it's because of you guys that like it really is a great community. But
Well,
yeah,
I'm really happy that you guys have enjoyed it and benefited from it. That's all of us that volunteer in leadership and in general in the community that are a part of it really care a lot about that, and it's all about the people.
definitely.
Because I think what makes us, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think what makes us a really different community is that while we do value the quality of content, the quality of shares, and kind of what we're talking about, we're really more about learning, exploring, and being okay with failure, right? Like learning from failures.
Totally.
The first year we did RUCTFE as a group, none of us knew what we were doing. Like few of the people in the room had even ever done any kind of code review, let alone done anything red team. Some of them were all were blue teamers or IT people that had never even done any security work.
Yeah.
But it was incredible because we all just came together and kind of put our heads together and figured it out. So that's kind of what MySec does.
Totally. And it's all attainable, like all the red team and the blue team and all
Mhm.
that stuff. You just got to share what you know and, again, like move everyone forward. It's really great.
And that's something that also
Absolutely.
fascinates me about this community is the fact that we are such a um, when you get in this industry, um, you're always learning, right? And you're constantly learning. And like our meetups are us learning new tricks and new things like SQL injection, like you said. You learn about that. There's different things that you learn about, and we're always constantly learning. It's like the way I explain to all my friends or anybody who's not in the infosec. It's like all my nerd friends that I didn't have in high school, who had the same interest as me, all meet up and we all have fun and
Mhm.
put our two peanut sized brains together and make a giant walnut brain. You know.
Yes. By our brains combined, we have one mega brain.
That's right.
What an interesting visual. Yes.
I figured you'd like that one.
Yeah, totally.
But let's dig it more in depth into you, Steven, or Zen mode.
Wait, no, first off,
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
how'd you get the handle?
Yes,
What's,
yes.
Oh
where's the
my
handle come
God.
from? We're going to do
The,
handle origin
the,
stories.
this origin story it's so lame. Okay, so do you guys know the game Peggle?
No,
Not sure.
no idea.
Okay, so
Tell us about it.
Peggle is a really pretty generic arcade game that's kind of in the style of the like the Chinese machines that drop the balls down, and
I think so.
you drop the ball and kind of aim it at different, whether it's something it goes through that gives you points or different objectives, that as it trickles down to the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
you've seen them, I'm sure, before in lots of arcades. They have
Totally.
different modern versions of them now, but so Peggle is a game like that, except instead of dropping from the top, you have like a small, like little launcher for the ball. And so one of the characters that you can play in that game uh, is I think an owl, and he's like a Zen master, or that his superpower is Zen shot.
Okay.
Uh, and so I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, and as you do with your friends when you're playing games, there's a lot of heckling going on
Of course.
as we were passing the controller around.
Yes.
And so he was playing particularly badly, and I said something to him like, are you gonna use Zen shot? And he goes, bro, I'm going full on Zen mode, and proceeded to just fail really, really hugely. He used Zen shot, which is supposed to be a shot that hits all of the scoreable points in an area
Mm.
automatically. Like the AI takes over and calculates the shot for you, right? Like it just does it. Somehow he still managed using Zen shot to get no points and lose his ball. So that's where Zen mode was born, and from then on we just kind of had a running joke of saying, if you're doing really poorly, you were in Zen mode.
Gotcha.
So that was how I gained the name, because
Good
I
to
thought that
know.
was really funny.
I like
I
that.
like it.
I love the fact that most handles come from like an old game or arcade game or something you used to play back in the day.
No,
Totally.
yeah, I think it was like on Xbox Live on Xbox 360 or something back in the day.
Oh, good old
I think it's
times, Xbox 360.
right. Yeah, I'm not old at all.
So sorry to cut you off, Nate. Whatever question you were gonna ask.
No, yeah, I was just gonna to kind of dive a little bit more into Steven, I've seen you a couple times, but I just wanted to kind of see what your interests were in infosec. Obviously, you said that you were doing some like server data recovery or I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but you're doing something along with server recoveries and like disaster recoveries, right?
Yeah, what kind
Yeah,
of projects you're
so
working on?
Yeah.
disaster recovery. The first work I did was on like small business network setup. So just getting firewalls installed up and running and having like a reasonable set of ACLs on them,
Okay.
Mm.
and then setting up like a Windows small business server or some other kind of center of activity for the organization that could host their email and whatever else they need. And then disaster recovery was the last piece of that. So or last piece that I predominantly worked with. There were other pieces obviously in IT, but
It's crucial stuff,
so
though.
yeah, like the big things, like that's all I really focused on. So after that, though, I got into in the IT managed services world, I got into things like scripting, automation, kind of architecture and design, beyond just making simple flat networks that just have one or two servers and a firewall, and the network infrastructure to support their users. That's You do that a million times, you get used to that. But
Yeah.
Automating the real rock and roll. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Scripting is like the thing that made me excited about IT in general, because there's so much that you can do with it, and with code in general.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
It's just really, really fun. It's very rewarding too when stuff works, right?
Oh,
yeah.
When you
very.
get it to work. So I did a lot of that kind of in my interim years, and then actually um, got away from the tech a little bit, doing like business IT strategy. So like going and sitting down with companies and figuring out like what kind of business objectives they had, what kind of technical solutions would enable those objectives better than maybe they were doing now manually, or with legacy systems that weren't working all that great, and generally kind of helping move people along. And so that's actually where I got more heavily involved on the compliance side. Was I worked with a lot of medical companies, so dealing with HIPAA and all the laws and regulations around disclosure and how that information needed to be managed, backed up, etc. That was what got me into kind of that the legal or compliance end of that conversation
Mm.
years ago. So now, fast forward to now I just kind of do, doing virtual CISO consulting. What I really love about it, above everything, above the detail of the work itself, is helping people and helping those businesses. Because the way I look at security, and I feel like this is a message that's lost, I think, on a lot of security practitioners, because a lot of people kind of approach it like a hobbyist, right? Like security is a really fun puzzle box, or set of objectives or challenges, and for somebody with the disciplines and expertise necessary to do that, that's really compelling, right? It's very fun. There's a lot you can spend your time on and get rewarded for.
Totally.
But and I totally have that love also. But the thing that I really care a lot about, and the reason that I do it, and was particularly interested in security to begin with, actually came from hearing a few talks from the head of a few different three-letter agencies a few years ago, and that was looking at the economic impact of IT outages that are related to cybercrime and other disruption caused by security issues.
Mm-hmm.
You start looking at that through the lens of thousands to tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars, for even a single day of outage in a region, for small companies alone.
Totally.
You start multiplying that by all the businesses that are in a region. When there's something like uh, uh, I just blanked on the name of the malware, but it's been packaged with Dridex recently. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, so malware outbreaks or mass security breaches over time.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about companies going out of business, people losing their jobs. It generally like is a way that the economy of an entire area could be gagged or choked, right? It
Yeah.
could really hurt people
Definitely.
way worse than they probably realize it's hurting them. because all they're thinking about is, oh well, I'm safe, I'm a consumer, my rights are really well protected, and banks have to replace all my money. But there's no one doing that for businesses,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
When a business gets breached or something happens to them, unless they have cyber insurance, and hopefully they have it with a provider that's not ripping them off, or making them jump through a million hoops that they'll never get money from, they're never going to recover from that. They're going to go out of business, and all the people that work for them are going to lose their jobs. They're going to be displaced. All the families that depend on those jobs are going to be affected,
Hmm.
and all the customers and clients and other businesses that are connected to that organization are all going to be affected. So there's a really big negative impact that's happening that I think a lot of us don't really think about at that level of detail. Um, but that's predominantly really what I find rewarding about the work is being able to stop that. We're really all that a lot of people have to help them. There's no one else but us. So like I take that part of the job very seriously.
Totally.
Yeah,
All of the
that's
consequences are non-trivial. Like all of those things, like can, as you were saying, like can totally lead to like a business like totally failing. Because the consequences are not thinking about the consequences until the the malware outbreak happens, and 80% all your nodes have some sort of variant of malware.
Yep.
Um, it,
Or even something simple like cryptoware. If you get
mhm.
your files stolen and ransomed back to you, like that destroys a lot of companies. Especially small businesses. They have no ability to bounce back from that.
Yep.
You talk about them losing their accounting software or their accounting database or
yeah,
all their client information or whatever. Like that's just it. They're done.
And that this brings up something interesting. Kind of why we're doing the podcast a little late today, is because my brother, his father is in the hospital currently, and he was just incubated and has a tube down to his lungs because one of his lungs collapsed
Mm.
from a procedure they did. Well, the machine is controlling his breathing. That's the only way he's alive right now is because of the machine that they have. And it just made me think about like all these stories of hospitals getting attacked by ransomware, and the threat to just like the healthcare system as well, you know, and how that kind of hit home because like if something did happen, like if somebody were to take over that hospital or the power were to go out for some reason or that system were to fail somehow, then he would die, and that's something that kind of hit home that I never really kind of expected until I experienced it today, and kind of was like, yeah, that's actually very, very important, you know?
Yeah,
totally.
totally agree with that. And I think healthcare in general specifically also has a litany of other issues there with all the quote unquote IoT devices that they have.
Mhm.
There's so many things like pacemakers, insulin injectors that are surgically inserted into people, things that could really harm or kill somebody. Like
Yeah,
you talked about a power outage. Even that is potentially very devastating to a hospital, right?
yeah.
Like this is horrible, real stuff that people often don't think about or they miss it. In the lingo and problems of the day internal in a security team or a technology team at a company.
Yeah. Now that we kind of have like a story of where you are at today and where you started, where do you see yourself in the future? That's something that I really was interested in and love hearing from people is like, where do you see yourself in maybe 5 to 10 years, or where do you want to take your next step to? Because obviously you're at a CISO position, virtual CISO, so that's relatively high up, at least in as of what I know of as a CISO position. So, is there anywhere else that you want to go? Anything that you want to do specifically with your career field?
So I think so. I'm also a professor at Baker College.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I advise their CCDN team for the metro campuses, and so education's probably my other big passion. Which again, going back to MySec and what MySec's all about, just that really gives me ability to scratch that itch, right? I get to, whether it's just supporting workshops that are starting or whatever, I'm really excited about that. So one specific thing inside of that I'm excited about that I've been personally spending a lot of time on, because I've done some red teaming and some other things kind of in a bubble up to this point, but I haven't gone really, really deep into the specifics of that world myself until recently. I started looking at I don't know if you guys have seen the education materials that are out there from Bug Crowd and HackerOne,
Hmm.
but kind of giving a beginning security researcher some tools and understanding and just the basics of what they need to get started. What I would really love to do is to give something like that to MySec in the form of a workshop. Maybe not necessarily like the particular topics that those guys chose, but like so you want to do security research, let's get you doing security research work kind of workshop. Whether it's going through something like Burp, like those guys did, or just some basic red team tools they could use for doing like Hack the Box or any CTF or game out there, or potentially bug bounty style work that might exist for them that they could do independently, and just get people doing that. Because I think that's, in terms of what we could accomplish in this area with all the people and the um, how much people care in this community, I think that would be a great next step. Because even if people don't end up being a security, quote unquote security researcher as like their main profession, after that, I think that'll really add to their understanding of what security is relative to those kind of systems that they've dove into, and really give them good perspective on that.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes it just takes like even just like showing people how to use the tool without them having to read like all of the documentation, just to like, spur like their imagination almost. Like even that, like it's some of like the most like, powerful stuff, give people ideas, something tangential even.
Mhm.
They might like, realize and they go, do some, security research, almost like by accident sometimes, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome, and the opportunities that you gain from realizing those things are incredible. Whether again it leads to a job or it's just something that you learned, it's awesome either way.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like that. I could definitely see you, seeing the fact that you have a lot of leadership roles. I could definitely see you, possibly opening, like a new tech type school, kind of like these coding boot camps and stuff.
Mm.
I could definitely see you doing something like that in the future, just off of what I know and seeing the fact that you love to kind of like Kent, you love to educate people and spread the education around,
Yep.
give everybody a piece.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I thinking back to what I had and didn't have coming up. I mean, I had MySec in the very beginning, and that was hugely helpful. But what MySec was then was really just a bunch of guys kind of getting together that were just figuring it out themselves, right? Like at that point in the group, it only been around for around a year, I think, maybe like 18 months max.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, what I would love people to have, like how amazing would it be for a new person, let's say just a new student, whether they're out of high school or enrolled in college, coming into this community, being able to get plugged into workshops that would give them some like actual hands-on skills. They could go and do their own independent stuff. They could bring that to their job, whatever it is. Like that would be really amazing, because like even with the talks and other things that were going on back when I joined, that stuff wasn't really as cemented because we hadn't really thought about that yet. And now we have a tremendous opportunity with all the great people we have involved in the community to do a lot of that kind of stuff. I think that would be a really awesome next step for MySec, and really just the community in general.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, I see it a lot myself going to Eastern. A school can only do so much. In the classroom at least, because there's restricted time limits and things like that, and it's really up to the student to be able to go out and ask professors or have work with the professors on doing research and doing things like that. And then obviously now you have the aspect of being able to be a part of something like MySec, where you can do things like that. And I think that's definitely something that would be useful for the future, because a lot of people ask me like, oh, what projects do you do? And I have ADHD, which is really bad. So I work on a little bit of this, a little bit of that here and there, and I constantly do stuff just because I want to constantly learn. And they're like, oh, well, how do you get into it? And I say, you just find something you like and you start digging into it. And so you don't have to, like, people find that they have to find a specific spot or they have to start somewhere, like, oh, I gotta do SQL injection because that's just, that's, I heard about it a lot. Like, no, it's do something that interests you. If you like scripting, coding, look into like malware analysis maybe. Like, if you're not into that, look into creating your own security tools, or looking how you can contribute to them on GitHub. you know um And that's something that's a lot of people get tripped up on. It's like, oh, I just, I don't know where to start. It's like just run with it. You don't have to start anywhere specifically. Just if you're interested in pen testing, like I was just talking to a coworker about this. He's like, I want to go into security. I want to get my security plus. He's like, do you have any other certs that you would recommend? And I said, I don't have any certs, but I can tell you what I've been recommended. And I can tell you where I would start personally. But it's really up to like what are you interested in? What is gonna make you do things that you wouldn't think you would be able to do, right? So like you create or find some new research, build a new tool, start your own company, do all these different things. So I don't know. I just wanted to voice that. That was something that I hear a lot.
I think that's great feedback. I think and that couldn't be more accurate, right? Like it's really I think the thing that intimidates people is how multidisciplinary security stuff is in general,
That's a great
regardless
word.
of the area.
Yep.
It's definitely multidisciplinary. And the
Yep.
reason I think that academia struggles with it is because if you look at the centers of academic excellence that exist for like quote unquote cyber defense, or like any of the focus areas that exist in the degree, what's recognized by the NSA and DHS around those topics, what they're teaching to are the concepts, not the practical application of those concepts.
Exactly.
And so I think in general in academia, that's a big struggle, and not just at Eastern, but everywhere. I think everyone but like the very, very top bleeding edge folks in education are really getting that right at this point in any kind of tech, whether it's security or even just IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, it evolves way too quickly for education to keep up. Like curriculum just doesn't evolve fast enough.
Well, and there's not enough people leaving the professional world to go there and help them keep it up.
Totally.
Exactly. And
Like
that's
not financially, doesn't make sense most of the time.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Because there's no way any university can usually competitively pay what a consulting firm, for example, could pay, or even what someone could make as an independent contractor in some cases.
Yeah, and that's something that like I just found quite interesting because it's like, you know, you'll hear students say, "Oh, the school doesn't prepare me for anything, this or that," and it's such a hard debate. It's like the school can only do so much. Like Kent said, and like you said, Stephen, is the fact that the schools can't keep up. Because they can't always keep changing the curriculum. They have to kind of teach those concepts, and then they can lead into the research aspect to the practical, the like hands-on experience and actually doing stuff that works. And that's why MySec is a great place to go, because if you're in college, you go to MySec and you can get real world experience. You can get advice from people that are in the industry like yourself. I hear you giving people, Steven, I'm talking to, I hear you give people advice all the time, and same with you, Kent. That's just, yeah, that's, sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack there. I didn't mean to sidetrack there, but that's, yes.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, man. 100%. Scream it from the mountaintops. We need more of that.
Yes.
We need more people just taking the time to lift other people up, give them advice, give them a book, whatever it is. That those little nudges in that direction are what make people excel in this industry.
Yeah.
Like potent sharing, like just like giving away books, like it's so good at the community. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Speaking of books, actually, you wanted to know more about the projects I'm working on.
Yes.
So MySec is going to be starting up next year a book club.
Oh.
It's going to be 2 tracks. There's going to be a very generic kind of tech track, which is just be some tactical security books.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll also be a leadership track for folks that want to get into leadership positions within the security world.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Good networking.
For sure. And what we're going to do, I think, is I don't know the exact timings of it yet. We're still kind of piloting the first iteration of this internally with a few members of leadership, but the goal is to get it to a point where we can kind of have a book, whether it's a book a quarter or like 2 books a year, something like that, and actually get together and whether it's podcasted or streamed live, whatever, actually have an open discussion with everybody that's participating, and give everybody like a few minutes to talk kind of about what they learned and what they thought was interesting, and really give people the opportunity to bring those ideas together and have everyone benefit from it.
I am very on board with this idea.
Yes, same.
Totally.
Yeah,
I'm glad you like it.
yeah, that's something that I'm actually working on for EMUSEC, the club at Eastern Michigan, or IASA.
Awesome.
Is like um, we go through this weird trial beginning phase every year where we kind of like the higher up or the people who have been with the club or been in the industry. They kind of teach the fundamentals and the stuff that maybe the school doesn't really divulge into too much, right? And the stuff to really get hands on. And I find that a lot of people kind of get bored with that, like year after year, having to do the same thing over and over again at the beginning phase, and then we can actually get into some good stuff at the end. So I'm working on actually using just OBS and recording the PowerPoints and going through it and putting those online and YouTube, so people can, instead of them having to uh, sit there in the club classroom and just learn stuff over and over again that they've already learned and be bored, they can just go online if they're newer, or we can have a certain segment of people who are dedicated to just teaching individuals who are in the entry level positions, versus having everybody start over again every year.
Totally. It really helps having like those like, virtual repositories of information, whether it's like a GitHub repository or, a YouTube channel, like having like those like things to allow for it, effectively asynchronous learning is like super, super like powerful and important for onboarding new members, whether it's MySec members, EMUSec members, etc. Like having that information and, chronologically, like, putting it into like the appropriate format, whether it's a podcast or like a wiki, is like super, super valuable, whether you're a company or, a community. It's really good stuff.
Sure
So
is.
I'm all on board with that for sure.
Well, I'm glad you guys are excited about it. I'm really excited about it. We started with just a leadership book for our first book, just to test the process. But I really think, I hope that the community will get a lot of value out of it. I think the more, to your point, Kent, the more repositories of information that exist that are easily accessible and have kind of a rich set of information there, the better, because that just gives people an asynchronous way to go and get that info without having to brain dump it from people in the community, and transfer that information a lot faster that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like not having to repeat yourself a million times, just being able to link to a YouTube video is perfect. Or, whatever, like just linking to something is much easier. Having something that's searchable,
Yes.
makes all the difference.
Absolutely. We have a lot of great people in the community that do a lot of projects around that stuff. Actually, he's going to be taking over as the leader in Detroit's chapter, Xavier Johnson, downtown.
DC
The
313.
Yeah, DC 313 hype. Awesome guy. Gave a great talk. You actually, Kent, your and his talks were besides the keynote, my favorite talks at B-Sides this year.
I appreciate it.
You guys,
His was fantastic. Yeah, I caught the last part of it, and I was all on board. Super good stuff.
Yeah, you guys both killed it from my perspective. I really loved it, and I loved that, like, in particular, both of you kind of took time to make the language that you were using in the presentation accessible to somebody that was maybe inexperienced or didn't know a lot of insider information about security, or even maybe technology, some of the technologies involved.
Totally.
That was really key. I think that was a very successful point of both yours and Xavier's talks. But I loved it. I love that you guys are doing this podcast. This is awesome.
Thanks. Is it just me, or is there like a weird like, oh, I gotta word it something a certain way and have to have it have big words in this industry? It seems like, especially like with the new place that I'm working at, like people try to
Acronym city, just whatever.
they try to
IT
put
and the
these big
whatever.
words in, and it's just like but that's not needed.
Yeah. I think it depends on the company's culture, where like, maybe if like, especially if you're like a global company and it's like super like not cool to you to do a bunch of like crazy English words when you have coworkers that like don't have English as a first language.
Yeah.
Like it just depends on the company, I think.
I'm just saying,
But
like in the industry in general, though, like just because
Oh.
you know Steven brought up a good point, and I'll let you talk. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but just the fact that you know you Kent and Infinite or Xavier, don't use those big words. They kind of, I guess you could say, dumb it down, or just they speak in a clearer language. You know, where it's like anybody, no matter if they are inexperienced or experienced, will understand what you're trying
Well,
to talk about.
here's my trick. I can't speak for Xavier, but my trick is I just don't know most of the big words, so I can't use them.
Fair enough. I like that trick.
That's, well, that's called gaming the system, and that's exactly what a hacker should do.
Exactly.
Yes.
Keep doing it, Ken.
Just keep ignoring big words. I can't fit them in my head.
I can't speak for Xavier, but for me in general, the reason that I focus on that is because a lot of the conversations I'm having are with outsider executives, right? So like most of my clients are at at the director level or higher. A lot of them are C-level people. So if I waste time having to explain a lot of jargon to
Right.
them, I'm going to lose them quickly.
Totally.
They're just going to be like, okay, this doesn't matter to my business. I don't see how this matters.
Definitely.
Why are you saying this to me?
Yeah.
But I think we as an industry, I think maybe we fall prey to buzzword soup a little bit more than others, only because right now in like the VC community, investments that are happening in the world, there's such a focus on investing in like new security companies and
Totally. Hype cycles. It's
technologies.
just
Oh my god, dude! Like it's ass. It's absolute ass for the industry because it just ends up creating a lot of jargon that doesn't mean anything.
You guys on Kubernetes yet? Or
Too soon. But that's I mean, you could probably think of a million examples of this, right?
totally.
Yeah.
It's really it's a slippery slope that marketing people and security companies fall into a lot, it seems like.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just like pure marketing, where like these like large companies like legitimately have the budget to dump money into developer advocates, dump money into different websites and marketing materials and communities. Like it's really interesting to like know that there's almost like a slight like almost like a level of manipulation in order to hype a product, regardless of it being like a good product or a bad product. Like most of the times it's just like obscure and the documentation doesn't tell you the security ramifications, so it's like hard to audit without like running it and testing it and doing like your own internal pen testing. It can be crazy, especially with like the different technologies that are continuing to evolve.
Yes.
We need to put some blockchain in this bitch. All right.
Oh yes,
That's right.
definitely.
I'm in this for the technology. Anyway, sorry.
But just before we have to go, I do want to just kind of touch base on this. If do you have any other projects you want to talk about, or kind of throw out there that people might be interested to tag along or give you some advice, kind of like they did with Tibbs, or we did with Tibbs. Do you have any specific projects that you're interested in doing or going to work on?
I mean, the big thing that I'm focused on right now is that workshop I mentioned.
Gotcha.
I'm just putting together my own understanding and application of kind of a generic set of tools and objectives that a beginning security researcher with not a lot of background in either tech or security could utilize. So like if there are resources that like I mentioned the HackerOne and BugCrowd university programs, like they have a lot of great videos, both of those guys. I have to
I'll check those out.
yeah, I have to rep them again. I've really enjoyed the stuff that they put out. But any resources like that, anything that is maybe geared towards new learners. Like I'm particularly trying to make the voice of the content be aligned with those kind of people. That's the audience I'm looking to reach. So any thoughts there? And any resources that you guys liked when you were first getting started or learning?
Yeah, I liked something that Kent showed me not too long ago was Katacoda, which is like a interactive. You just do it through your web browser. It's an interactive environment, so you pretty much get like a VM instance, but not as laggy or slow like a VM instance is. And you walks you through the tutorial, and you can input code, and you can do it all through GitHub. Like you can do the back end of it, type out the instructions and all the code that would be put into it, and it's all done via Linux. So I think that's a really cool thing that I've used and that I'm using.
Catacode is a really good tool.
Yeah.
Catacode. I'll have to check that out. What actually, we've talked about GitHub a couple times, but not talked about it. What do you guys think about content for getting somebody comfortable with using GitHub regularly?
That's interesting. If you wanna go ahead, yeah.
So for me, I've been having like a lot of kind of like success when like I try to like get people using like GitHub is to like to direct them, especially if they're like new to Git and like the commands are a little intimidating sometimes, especially like when you get into yourself into like a whole like mess of like putting your stuff, stashing stuff and like doing anyway. The GitHub desktop client for Windows and Mac OS are like really, really solid. And there's like other third party like GitKraken and stuff like that. But the GitHub desktop client, officially made by GitHub, is like really fantastic and like making working with Git really easy to use and visual. So like I've had a lot of experience using that with some success. And then like in VS Code, some of like that kind of features almost exist like within the like VS Code window itself, but I tend to actually like the GitHub desktop a little bit more.
That's awesome. So does the GitHub desktop application does it give you visibility into the commands that it's using on the back end for what it's doing for you? Like, do you see that in the readout of commands in the terminal, or is it just kind of?
I haven't found anything like that, but just like purely like giving you like arrows to like know that like in the upstream repository something has changed, and so you want to pull down those changes, and so it gives you a little down arrow visualization. You click on it, and then when you want to like commit stuff, you can like click on the stuff that you want to commit, and shows you the difference in green and red really visually, very nicely. Stuff like that. It doesn't give you like the actual commands, sadly, at least not that I found. But the actual like Git website has some decent videos actually to get started with the raw commands that I found.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check those out. So I like when I was learning it myself, I think I just used like the manual pages that they had because I don't.
Yeah, that's rough.
a lot of tutorials out when I first started learning Git, but no, like I've been on the lookout for resources like that. So I'll check those out. I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, that's GitHub's great. I love GitHub. So much fun. Git. But yeah, so where should people contact you if they want to help you out with that, with these workshops?
The best way to get in touch with me would be to go to the MySec website, mysec.us, and get on our Slack instance. Just ping me. My handle is Zenmode. You can also reach me on Twitter at Zenmode. It's ZENM0DE. If you want to reach out, if you ever want to chat, I'm always open to talking, meeting new people, helping people get into this community. So, even if I don't know you, always feel free to reach out. I'm here for you.
Awesome.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, thank you guys for being on the podcast. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed this. So yeah, thank you for listening. Internet. See you on the next one.
That's right. Y'all have a good one.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me on.